Hello and welcome to the fourth video on our series on the real business cycle model. Today we're going to go back and continue the consumer and household problem, this time focusing on the labor supply choice of consumers. So we're going to start where we left off 2 videos ago with the first three conditions of the consumer with respect to leisure today and leisure in the future. These two first three conditions are going to determine the labor supply of the consumer. Now, the interpretation of them is fairly similar to what we've done before in the videos covering the math review for the course, and so I'm going to go over it rather quickly. It suffices to say that in both cases, the left-hand side is going to be the marginal cost of more labor. More labor implies less leisure, and less leisure implies less utility. So the opportunity cost here, the fact that if you work more, you're going to be foregoing utility, is what's being captured by the left-hand side. The right-hand side is the value, of course in utils, of the income generated from working. Now, if you work today, you get W extra units of income. If you work tomorrow, you get W prime units of income in the future. Then you need to price that and value it in terms of present utility. Lambda is able to price present income in terms of utility. 1 over 1 plus R, it's going to value future income in terms of present income. That's why in the first equation we multiply lambda times W to get the present value in utility of the additional income generated today. And then in the second equation we multiply by lambda and divide over 1 plus R to take future income into present value and then that present value of income into utility with lambda. In both cases, we're trading off consumption and leisure. But we can actually think of these in two margins that are left to determine. The first margin is the present consumption versus present leisure margin. You can think that you can trade off less leisure, hence more labor, for more consumption today. But you can also trade off less leisure, that is, more labor, for future leisure in the future. How will this work? If you reduce leisure today and work more, you get more income. You can use that to consume. That's one margin, that's one trade-off you can focus on. But on the other hand, instead of consuming, you can use that additional income to save. Those savings are going to give you more consumption in the future. As you have more consumption in the future, more income in the future, you can have also more leisure. So we're going to go through both of these margins one at a time. First, we're going to focus on the intratemporal margin. We call this intratemporal because we're trading off present leisure for present consumption. In this case, the interpretation is the same as before. That is the same as the one we had earlier in the math review videos. The marginal rate of substitution is the rate at which the consumer is willing to trade consumption for leisure. W is the rate at which the market trades consumption for leisure. So if the marginal rate of substitution of consumption to labor is less than W, the consumer trades leisure for consumption. It's a good deal for the consumer. One less unit of leisure decreases utility, but generates more than enough income to compensate in utility through the additional consumption that the agent can buy. So in this case, we know that if W increases, there is going to be more labor supply and more consumption. We're here always assuming that the substitution effect dominates over the income effect. So we're going to be thinking of this coming from this marginal rate of substitution, saying if W goes up, then what we want to know here is what's going to happen with labor. Well, if W goes up, then we're going to need the marginal rate of substitution to go up, and the way we're going to get that is by reducing leisure and increasing consumption. Okay. The second margin we're going to focus on is the intertemporal margin. Now we're trading off present leisure against future leisure. That's going to complicate things just a bit because the condition looks a bit more involved. There are more terms. Now the first term is going to be the left-hand side. The marginal rate of substitution is now the rate at which the consumer is willing to trade present for future leisure. So what you want to know here is how much future leisure is needed to compensate the consumer for 1 unit of present leisure. The right-hand side is going to be the price at which the market is willing to trade this off. Now, this price might look deceivingly complicated, but we can actually analyze it by focusing on units and thinking of it one step at a time. So if the consumer forgoes 1 unit of leisure today, the consumer is going to work 1 more hour. That additional hour is going to give the consumer W units of income. Now, that W units of income can be saved, generating 1 plus R times W units of income. Now we can then check how much leisure can I buy with that many hours, how many hours of leisure can I buy with that much income, 1 plus R times W? Well, we need only check how much that is relative to W prime. You can get the same outcome if you were doing it the other way around. Working 1 less hour today decreases my income by W. Then you need to get in debt to make up that income. If you get a debt of W, then tomorrow you have to pay 1 plus R times W in interest. Then you can ask, how many hours do you have to work tomorrow to pay off 1 plus R times W? Because each hour is going to pay you W prime, you can easily see how the division you get is the answer, is this same relative price. Now, out of this, we also know that if W prime goes up, the consumer is going to have incentives to work less today, save less, borrow more, and make it up with future labor. That's going to be important because the consumer, being forward-looking, can think, look, wages are going to be high in the future. I should get in debt so that I can pay with my future income and work when I can get more for it. Okay, that's going to be important because if the interest rate changes, that looks exactly the same as wages changing. Actually, if the interest rate goes up, that's the same thing as W going down in present value. So the consumer has incentives to work more today and save, so as to work less tomorrow. So in this world, an increase in the interest rate is the same as a decrease in future wages, or equivalently in the present value of future wages. That's going to incentivize you to work more today so that you have more money saved. Now interest rate is increasing, so saving looks like a good idea. Tomorrow you have more savings, you can work less. With this in mind, we can now finish up and look at the labor supply graphically. Here we're relating the labor supply with the number of hours worked relative to W, the current wage. Notice though that this is going to depend on the interest rate because of the intertemporal trade-off that we were just discussing. If the interest rate goes up, there are incentives that at the same wage, so if you draw a horizontal line here, at the same wage, you want to work more today so as to save and be able to work less in the future. Similarly, an increase in present value of wealth, now not because of the wage, but because of some other reason like lower taxes or higher profits, it's going to incentivize you to just work less today. Okay, with this, we are finishing up with the consumer's problem. In the next video, we're going to tackle the firm's problem. And with that, we're going to be just one step away from our equilibrium analysis. Thank you.